I see some join. Welcome, Nikia, and welcome, Imari. My name is Joyson. I'm a volunteer for Black Mental Wellness and happy to be supporting today's session, Beyond Diversity, Cultivating Spaces Where Black Voices Flourish with Sorby. When Sorby reached her moment of clarity, she had already proven to herself to be a professional problem solver, highly successful at turning schools with significant challenges and empowering educators. She realized her knowledge and skills would be a powerful aid to emerging leaders who are largely unsupported, including heading nonprofits for women and people of color. Sorby currently serves as the president of Climb Higher, which prepares working adults for entry-level jobs in tech. She also operates her own practice, Farther Together, focusing on strategic planning, retreats, coaching, and consulting for individuals, nonprofits, and small businesses. Before Climb Higher, Sorby was the chief program officer for the Center for Resilience. She served as the head of school for KIPP Public Charter Schools, principal at Achievement First Public Charter Schools, and managing director of Program for Citizen Schools. She began her professional journey with Teach for America, first as an educator, then as a bilingual content curator, and Summer Institute director. Sorby earned her master's degree in public policy and urban planning from Harvard and her master's in elementary education and teaching from Pace University. She holds a bachelor's degree in government and American studies from Cornell University and is a certified executive and leadership coach, and a member of the International Coaching Federation. I'll give it to you, Sorby.
Thanks so much, and welcome everybody. I am really excited to be here. I will say I'm very used to Zoom and I can't actually see myself or any of you while I'm talking, but I do have a chat open, and if anything goes wonky, just like put it in the chat so that I'm aware of it, and if I look silly, just let me know because I can't see myself or what I look like. But I'm really, really excited to be here, and thanks so much for that introduction. I wanted to share a little bit about me beyond my bio. I always think that it's always so weird hearing my bio and hearing that version of me because we are such fully whole people, and that's just like my credentials as opposed to like what makes me tick. So here are a few pictures of the things that get me excited and make me tick. You can often find me with a book and a cup of coffee, and I love to travel. This is a picture of me in Istanbul last year, and it was absolutely gorgeous. It's right across from the Blue Mosque, and it was just really an unexpected treat on a trip to Greece that I went to. I also run races, which I like to talk about. Actually, instead of working with a group of girls today for the 5K that one of the boards that I'm on is putting on, I'm here with all of you. But I really love running. I'm a late bloom runner, and this is my second marathon. I was smiling at this point. You see the gentleman behind me, and he's not smiling. That's how I looked at the end of the race. So don't think that I was smiling the whole time. And then on the top picture, as Joyson shared when sharing my bio, I was a principal, and I was a turnaround principal. For those of you who don't know what a turnaround school is, it's a school that's experiencing some culture and education struggles. I went there and spent 5 years leading that school and building a community. And those three amazing individuals are now, what are they? They're now juniors at various colleges, but I knew them in 5th grade. And I promised them that I'd be there at their high school graduation. And there I was. And it was a pretty special moment. And yes, Nakia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. A lot of joy, because I think that it's so important to ground our life in the moments of joy that we have, especially as we're talking about issues that are really challenging and affecting our communities. So that's a little bit about me. I like to know who I'm going to be talking to for the next 40 minutes or so. So if you could just take a minute and in the chat, tell me who you are, share what you do and something outside of work, what gives you joy. And then what brought you to this session? Like, why are you here today? And just so that I know I can like skip through certain slides or double click on certain areas, let me know. Who are you and what brought you to this session? You can also feel free to come off mute if you'd like. I think we're a small group, so. Thanks for sharing, Adoa. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, please correct me. Thanks, Dana. I was going to mention that. Welcome, Alexis. Foodie, love a foodie. Thanks, Janie or Jane. All right. I'm getting a lot of like, this topic seemed interesting. It was something that seemed relevant. Welcome, Cassidy. Welcome, Alana. We got a lot of runners in this group. I love it. Okay, so let me know at any point. I am looking at the chat and you can probably see me like averting my eyes to the corner. So let me know at any point if there's something that you want to double click on, or if I'm going too fast, or if actually a topic's just not that much interesting to you. I will not take it personally. I want this session to be useful and helpful for all of you. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I know that you are all here because you're intrigued by this. So I want to make sure that you are getting what you need. A quick question, and someone can just put this in the chat. Are the slides progressing from what you can see? Great. All right, so in terms of our agenda for today, we're going to start with setting the stage of Black mental health in the workplace. What does that mean? And what is some of the data that grounds this session? Then we're going to move to talking about foundations of inclusive culture. And in my opinion, I think some of the foundations of inclusive culture at the bedrock of that is psychological safety. And so I'm going to share some strategies and some key aspects around psychological safety. Then we're going to talk about some systems and programmatic changes that leaders can make in organizations. And if you're not a leader, but you are a part of an organization, how you can get started to unpack some of that. And then we're going to move to path forward commitments and resources that I can leave with you, or you can reach out to me and you can get. This session, as I was like codifying it and thinking about it, could be like a 2-week-long seminar. So I'm going to go touch the surface on a few things, but I have a lot of resources that I can give out to you at the end of our time if you just send me your email, and I'll make sure that you get those resources for any topics that you think are really going to pique your interest. So I hope you guys can see this slide, because on my second screen, it's not progressing. So hopefully that's working out. But on this slide are a bunch of statistics that really just underscore the importance of this topic, and why I was so excited when I submitted this proposal and wanted to talk about it at our conference that we're here today. They're pretty, as I think, as a Black woman who is now in corporate America and has worked in nonprofit and education world, pretty like pivotal and also gut-wrenching. That so many of us feel this way as we are at work and see the implications of what it means to be Black in America in our work systems. And I think this doesn't come as a surprise. I think the only thing that is surprising is that some of these statistics are in the last 5 years or so. But there's a lot of research that's done on this, yet there still isn't a lot of movement or action being done. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the implications and why I felt so compelled to present this today. There's an invisible load that comes with being a Black person in a workplace. Oftentimes at white majority or white led organizations, Black people find themselves to be the only or a significant or a very small minority of people in their workplace. Being the only is just an isolating experience. It can amplify feelings of being under scrutiny. It also heightens the pressure to perform and to counteract stereotypes, which is very closely related to also a stereotype threat. I like to go over these words just because they're very familiar for me, and I want to arm everybody with the language of the invisible load that so many Black people face when they're in the workforce. So stereotype threat is this pressure felt by people who are the only to make sure that they are not succumbing to the negative stereotypes that are assigned to their races. And so, if you're running late, do you want to be grouped along with everybody who says, oh, people of color or Black folks are always late? If you have an emotional reaction to something, I'm a Sagittarius, I'm an only child. I sometimes get very emotional and react to things. And I remember so many times in my past when I was like, I don't want to be labeled the Black angry woman, but I also have emotions that are valued. And I want to make sure that I'm able to express myself when I'm not feeling happy without being called this angry Black woman. And that's very much connected to the way that microaggressions can exacerbate this load that exists for so many of us. Statistics have shown there's so many statistics that show the impact of microaggressions and the tiny razor cuts of wondering, is that actually something that I should say? Is that something that I should be offended about? Or do they not even understand that? Or should I just ignore it? And that leads to racial battle fatigue, where you just feel a cumulative stress and just cumulative stress of all of these tiny instances, or sometimes not so tiny instances. And then also now with so much going on in social media and access to news and access to all of the stories, it can be wearing on many people. And that exacerbates some of the statistics around depression, around anxiety that exists for the Black community at work. And then finally, there's an emotional tax. There's a high emotional tax being paid by our Black brothers and sisters. And it's not just around momentary interactions, but it's this ongoing burden of being different that can totally sap your energy, diminish sense of belonging, and also just affect general mental health. So this is what I call the invisible load. And these are just some words that I use to describe the impact of working so many Black individuals feel when working in majority white organizations. And so when I think about moving beyond these statistics, I didn't want to spend too long on what the reality is, because I think all of us who came to this session are very aware of what some of the reality is. I think you kind of have to be living underneath a rock to not understand what some of the realities is. I'm action oriented, so I want to talk about what do we do, when we have Black folks who are at the table, and we have people we have this push for diversity, and we want diverse workplaces, we want diverse communities. But what do you need to do when there's difference at the table? What do you need to do to make sure that you're having an inclusive culture? And like I shared in our agenda slide, I believe the bedrock of that is psychological safety. So I'd love to do a reflection exercise. You don't have to put it in the chat, but I do have a question for you. I want you to think about instances in your professional life that made you feel either safe or unsafe. What contributed to your safety, and what was missing would you have liked to occur to provide safety? We're going to come back to this reflection, so I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do it. Look at my time. And you have 2 minutes just to do a silent reflection on this. Got about 1 more minute if you're still reflecting. I'm gonna look through the chat. All right, hold on to those reflections because we're going to come back to that in a second when we're thinking about strategies around psychological safety. So psychological safety, just in terms of what it is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. I think psychological safety and belonging are very, very close together. And if the more that leaders and we understand psychological safety, the more that we can truly build cultures in our buildings, in our organizations, on our Zoom screens that are about belonging or centered in belonging. Timothy R. Clark is an organizational psychiatrist, an anthropologist, and he has this quote about psychological safety. And the portion in purple is the portion that I always just reflect on and think are so helpful and just a really impactful way of thinking about psychological safety, is that it's built on a moral foundation of looking on our fellow creatures with respect and giving them permission to belong and contribute. We've all been in that meeting where you offer something up and it's ignored or someone else is given credit for it. We've all been in that moment where something that's really important to you, you offer it or share and it's not taken seriously. Or even you don't feel safe enough to offer or share something that is important to you. Now, in my bio, which was shared earlier, I'm the president of a nonprofit, and we pride ourselves in having a very diverse staff. I am number 2 in the organization, and about 75% of our staff identify as people of color. The founder is a white woman. And something that happened recently, we went to our first in-person retreat, and jokingly and also importantly, right before I got on the plane and was doing my final packing, I shared, y'all make sure you put your bonnet in your bags because we're going to be away for a week, and you can't be in a house, you can't be on a trip without having your bonnet, which was like kind of humorous and also just like a reminder to pack all the little things that you had. And it was really interesting, the different reactions that staff members had. I had a staff member who'd worked at Ernst & Young for about 10 to 15 years. She's now a director in our organization. She's fully successful in any ways that you would define it. And she sent me a note and she said, this is the first time that anyone at work has ever talked about a bonnet and something that I use every single day. And I just feel really seen. And this is a little thing that I was just trying to, inject some levity into this aspect of us being away for a week and reminding people to pack things. And that had a huge impact on me being vulnerable and saying some of the things that I need to put in my suitcase. Just had a huge impact on her as to, oh, this is a safe space for me to be about. This is a safe space for me to show the different aspects of my personality. A small anecdote just to show how there are little things that you can do to signal it's okay to be who you are in this organization. So when we think about psychological safety, there are 4 quadrants that that different individuals share when thinking about psychological safety: learner safety, collaborator safety, challenger safety, and inclusion safety. I put this slide here just so that when we hear the word safety, we can begin to have a shared understanding of the different ways that safety can exist. And as you think about, I want in the back of your head for you to think about those reflection moments when you were thinking, when is it that I felt safe? What type of safety did you have? Was it challenger safety? Did you feel free to speak your mind? Or was it something like learner safety? When you didn't know something, you were okay to say, I don't know what it is. Or were you okay to make a mistake and actually experiment a little bit with whatever project that you had? So now let's go back to your reflection, and I actually think I'm going to come off of shared screen so I can see you guys and we can have a quick conversation. One or two people coming off of mute. What were the things that helped you feel safe? You can either put it in the chat or come off of mute. What were some things that your leader did that helped you feel safe? Let's see. Oh, okay, Nakia, thank you for sharing. You can just put it in the chat then. Yeah, Erica, it's so important to see people who look like you in leadership positions and also hearing non-code switch voices. Yes, yes. Yeah, there is safety in numbers, Adoa. Thank you for sharing. Would love one or two people to also share. What are some things that happened that made you feel safe? That's so important to be able to express hurt and anger without consequences. That's like at the bedrock of, those are emotions that we have. Ooh, okay. And Mari's telling me a tip. Give me 1 second. There's a button on the top right of the main screen that says to share. Give me 1 second to see if I can do that. I don't see that. I'm sorry, y'all. Because I'd love to have a conversation. Okay, I think we're going to have to do the chat so that I don't lose momentum. But Amala, I agree with you. Like being able to express all aspects of our emotions, like hurt, anger, joy, without feeling that we're going to be consequences is so key. It's just so important to being safe. I'm really curious about the ways that the leadership or the organization did that for you. If you could share that in the chat. Senchia, just being able to say, this is a safe space, and also modeling what that judgment looks like, what that lack of judgment looks like. All right, I'm going to go back onto our screens. Hopefully folks can see the slides. I think I see it on my iPad, so it all looks good. There's some key indicators for safety. And Jason, if you could put in the chat this handout, also all of you all can feel free to actually go to that. It's a pretty easy link there, bit.ly Beyond Diversity handout. It's going to have some indicators of safety, of psychological safety, as well as some strategies for you to use. But I think some key indicators that I look for whenever I'm leading an organization, leading a team, or consulting with an organization about this is people feeling safe to take risk. I hear people saying things that are risky or might not make sense or actually against the groupthink of conversations that are happening. The unpopular opinion is openly shared. There's an environment of mutual respect. It's not just everybody listening to the leader. People are actively nodding and listening to every single person that is talking in the group. Everybody is given that level of respect and kindness and heard. And mistakes are not punished. Mistakes are seen as opportunities for growth. Mistakes are seen as potential innovations that can happen later. There's an excitement whenever there is a mistake on there. Of course it says that I need to request access on video. Okay, give me 1 second. I tell you all, I work at a virtual organization, and you'd be surprised that I do that. I appreciate your grace. Give me 2 seconds to get this for you. Hopefully I'm not sharing screen anymore so you don't see my messy inbox, but give me 2 seconds and I'm going to share access. All right, can you all refresh for me and see if it worked? I see some people coming in. I see an anonymous jackal and all right, I think it's working. If it's not working for you, refresh and then it should work. Thank you all for your grace. Great, love it. So there are a number of indicators of psychological safety that you'll see on there, and you'll also see some strategies to get to those indicators of psychological safety. I think one of the things that I often tell people when talking about psychological safety is we all know how to make psychologically safe environments. We all personally have felt safe or unsafe. And if we do some reflection and thinking around what are those moments when we have felt the ability to take risk and the ability to share our fully authentic selves, we can actually create those environments. So this is a handout that has some strategies, but really the world is your oyster in terms of the strategies that you can use. So as you look at those strategies, I'd love to see in the chat, are there any ahas, questions, or strategies that you would like to add? Yes, I will, Erica. Give me 1 second. Here you go. Thanks, Joyson. Oh no, Amala, tell me more. And this is where I wish we had some conversation. But if you can type, I'd love to hear a little bit about why you've given up or how we could potentially help thinking about like what's the challenge that you're facing or what's the reality that you're facing that's making you give up. Yeah, this work is hard, especially if you are in a space where you yourself don't feel safe. When what does it mean to actually create that safe space? It takes energy, and sometimes we don't have that energy. And you need to give yourself that space because you can't help others or create those safe spaces from an empty cup. So thank you for your vulnerability and just sharing that. Any other questions or reflections? Erica, I'm really glad that you're able to leave an unsafe space. And I hope that this new space that you're going to gives you that, gives you what you need. Yes, those assumptions. I've also had people make assumptions around how are different ways that I show joy or what excites me. And I'm writing that down, Mariama. Tell me if I mispronounced your name, please. I have a 9-letter first name, so I always like to make sure people pronounce it correctly. But yeah, in terms of not making assumptions, I'm going to add that to the list because it's so key to just ask the question or be curious so that people can feel that they don't have to fit into a certain mold for you to assume correctly about their intentions. Yes, Amari, thank you for that. Okay, I just got a time check, so I'm going to keep going. but feel free to keep having reflections around psychological safety in the chat. So I think a lot about psychological safety in terms of this is things that individuals can do. Yes, there can be organizational change around psychological safety. And I think it's important that when organizations or structures are thinking about what are the things that I'm going to put into, sorry, give me a moment. What are the structures and systems am I going to put into place to make sure that I have an inclusive organization? Psychological safety is the bedrock. Like, I think it's very important that individuals understand psychological safety when they're leading teams or leading organizations or thinking about structures. But that's not enough. Sometimes, especially when leading institutions or organizations, you've got to rewrite some of the rules that have been written for so many years to ensure that you are being truly inclusive and moving beyond diversity. Like, I don't need to go on my soapbox. I know I'm amongst people who agree with me. So I wanted to share some additional statistics that really gets to the point around systemic changes. So these 3 statistics really talk about some of the system and the broken system that is resulting in the reality for Black folks that are in workplaces. So Black employees only holding 3.2% of senior leadership roles in large companies. Black people are 4% of C-suite leaders. And Black employees saying they have they're 1.5 more times likely to not receive any feedback, specific feedback on their performance. Now, as somebody who coaches on leadership development and somebody who has managed teams for many years, the fact that folks are not getting feedback is directly correlated, and not getting feedback on their performance, whether it's constructive or positive, is directly correlated with their promotion, is directly correlated with why the C-suite does not look like the rest of the organization. Crystal, I hear it. I have a whole set of sessions on giving feedback. Yes, I agree with you. There's been so many managers that I've had have not given me feedback. And it's actually, I've been fortunate to have mentors who've given me feedback and really pushed me so that I am currently now in a C-suite. And let me tell you, when I go to conferences, when I present, when I talk to different people, it is very isolating. And then I become the only. And so there's like a cyclical aspect to what this system of not giving feedback, not having clarity around performance management, not having clarity around hiring, not having clarity around promotion that is impacting us and Black folks so devastatingly. So I think there are 3 pivotal moments when we think about an organization and thinking about an organization making change beyond diversity. The first is fair hiring practices. I think a lot about fair hiring practices and what are the ways that we are inclusive in the way that we hire. What are the ways that we move beyond just saying, oh, we make sure that we hire, we have an interview conversation with 1 or 2 people of color or 1 or 2 Black individuals so we can have a diverse pool. What are the things that we have to undo in order to make sure that we have fair hiring practices? Equitable promotion practices, and I'd also add transparent promotional practices. How do you play the game? How do you play the game when you come into this workplace so that you know how to advance? Because sometimes those things are gatekept. Sometimes those things are actually talked about when you're playing pickleball or when you're you're talking about, I don't know, the play that all the kids are doing. And that information isn't actually in the handbook. It isn't actually very clear in conversations as to how is it that you get promoted in this organization. And if that is not clear and if that is not transparent, promotions are kept to only a small few. And what are the ways that performance evaluations and opportunities for feedback are consistent and equitable and done in a way that actually leads to people growing, not just leading to people feeling bad because you're talking about all the things that they aren't doing. And, even then, studies have shown that, and I just shared that statistic, Black folks disproportionately are not given positive or negative feedback. There's just no feedback. It's a feedback void. And some of it is fear. Some of it is lack of understanding of how to give feedback generally. But at the end of the day, Black folks are disproportionately impacted by a lack of fair hiring practices, by a lack of equitable and transparent promotions, and lack of transparent and equitable performance hiring, performance evaluations. And I think of these as things as pivotal moments in an organization. And oftentimes I think these are the places that organizations need to start if they want to actually move beyond diversity and checking boxes that we have 2 to 3 people of color or 2 to 3 Black folks who are working in the organization. And so where do we start? We've all seen this meme. I had to pull it out because every single time I scroll on Instagram, I chuckle, or if I see it on LinkedIn. Where do we start? And I think the key way to start is to begin with organizational introspection, because not all organizations have the same problem. Many organizations look like this pyramid, but not all of them have the same situation happening as to why their organization looks like that. Some places have really great equitable hiring, but they don't have leadership development. Their middle managers don't know how to give feedback across lines of difference. And so individuals who don't get promoted, don't feel like there's opportunities to grow, and then never get to the top of their organization. Other organizations have really clear promotion criteria, but their hiring practices are all based on referrals, and every single person in the organization looks like them. Every single person in the organization went to all of the schools or live in all the neighborhoods that they do. And so there's no way that people of color or Black people will be able to get into that organization. So the thing that you do first is you ask hard questions and you really think about organizational introspection. Are there patterns as to who gets hired and promoted? And do these patterns reflect bias? 90% sure that there are patterns, and I'm almost 98.9% sure that those patterns reflect bias. And oftentimes some of the bias that you'll see are not only based in race, they're also based in gender, sexuality, and it's some hard questions that organizations need to ask if they want to begin to chip away at this thing. So what are some strategies that you can put in place for leaders and organizations? Now, when I was writing this slide and thinking about how to talk about this, I was like, oh, this right here is like a 90-day course, and each one of these could, or a semester-long course. I did ask for the syllabus from one of you as to how you talk about some of these topics, but there's a lot here, and it's not easy. Each one of these bullets is layered, complex, but really important if this is something that you're committed to. So bias training and education, especially about across lines of difference. And I'm not only talking about racial lines of difference, I'm talking about all the aspects of difference, because when we have difference, it becomes challenging to give feedback. It becomes challenging to think about things objectively, because we all exist in a biased world. Bias exists. It's neither good nor bad. There's some aspects of bias that are key for survival. And what we need to do is have an understanding of that, so that every single person in the organization is really clear about their role in inclusion. Structured interviews and evaluations. Everybody on my team hates it whenever I'm involved in an interview process, because I use a lot of rubrics. I make sure that we're all normed on what it is that we're looking for. I make sure that we understand that if someone's like, oh, I want to make sure that they have this in their past experience, what is it that we're potentially unpacking there? Like, let's unpack, what do you mean that you want to make sure that they've got good education? Erica, I love it. Yes, rubrics. I love a good rubric, and making sure that it's really clear about how this decision is going to get made and what are the competencies that you're looking for, and that every single candidate goes through the same process. It doesn't need to be a long process, but it needs to be a consistent process in order for it to be equitable. Some other things that I do in interviewing that I think is really important is, right before the interview, making sure that the hiring manager or the interviewers email the candidate telling them what to expect. You don't have to tell them the questions, but you can say, here are the competencies that we're going to review. Here are the things that we're expecting. It makes a level playing field so people can come prepared and bring their best foot forward. If you're in a virtual world like I am, some of the things that I also make sure is really clear and proactive is you don't have to dress up. Or maybe you do. Make clear the implicit things in your organization that signal commitment, that signal excitement. And if you don't do that, it doesn't level the playing field. if this is the first time someone's working at your type of nonprofit, if it's the first time that someone's working in a school and they don't know, I remember at my old school, no one wore three-piece suits when they came to an interview. One, because I told them not to, but two, if you're going to be working with kids, you don't need to be in a suit. We do have some standards, like we didn't allow jeans because we wanted to have like a professional atmosphere. So I told that to candidates. So when they came, they didn't feel othered. Othering begins at the interview process. And if you're interviewing people legitimately, let's include them into your culture and make the implicit explicit so that they can jump in as soon as they're ready to go. Diverse hiring panels, transparency and promotion process. I feel like I talked about that a little bit. Mentorship and sponsorship programs. There's a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And I think, I know that there's been a lot of communication about this in the past, but I think these are the moments that can really make a difference for all members of an organization. Sponsorship, which is different than mentorship, is when people are looking out for you and saying, here's a role, here's a scholarship, here's a cohort experience that I think would be really important for you. And it's those types of moments that allow for individuals to become promoted. Because there's also a lot of studies that say, oh, the reason why we picked him for promotion or picked her for promotion is because she's got all these extra certifications. She's been all these cohort experiences. She has these connections. And it's those things that aren't necessarily part of the job description or part of the expectations that allow people to rise and be seen. And so all of you who are managers, I push you and I ask you, what are the ways that you're mentoring or sponsoring people who are not in the room at certain conversations? Employee resource groups, I feel like folks know a lot about those. I think there's like really good ways and really bad ways to run employee resource groups. That's a whole other session. But employee resource groups that are empowered, have funding, and actually have goals that are clear and supported by the organization can be so pivotal and so strong for creating inclusive organizations and really getting at some of these other aspects of diverse hiring panels, retention, and then inclusive leadership development. Leadership development that doesn't happen when you're only at the C level, making sure that leadership development happens when you are at entry level, making sure that it's not just, if it's not just a bonus pot, there's a baseline expectation for leadership development and a baseline expectation for what are some of those aspects of leadership development that everybody can get. Any questions about some of these strategies? I saw some comments from Christine and Nakia, as well as Erica about some of the things that I was sharing. But yes, Nakia, I agree. Retention starts at the interview process. Yes, Sharon, non-traditional education and competencies. That's one of the reasons why at the bedrock of this is about like when I talk about interviewing, it's about what competencies are we looking for, not what experiences or things that happened or places that they worked, because a lot of people can get really good experience by not going to some of the traditional places that we see things for roles. All right, got another time check. I'm gonna keep going, but keep it going in the chat. So I wanted to talk about some suggestions for getting started. I didn't want to just share a long list of things that you need to do if you're going to be create structural changes in your hiring, promotion, or leadership development processes. I think if in your organization, pick one area. Really start off with that reflection question and organizational introspection. And depending on the role that you have, and I would argue in terms of change management, all roles that you have, you got to build a coalition. Who are the supporters? Who are the people who will agree with you and can come with you and help you create the proposal, help you engage with the decision makers to make sure that this change gets made? Take stock of the decision maker motivation. Is your decision maker motivated by data? Is your decision maker motivated by emotion? Is your decision maker motivated by fear that everybody's going to leave? Whatever it is that your decision maker is motivated by, that's what you lead with. You don't lead with what you're motivated by. I'm glad that you're motivated by something and you can talk about it with your coalition, or once you get the buy-in from the decision maker, you can do that, but you've got to lead with what's at the heart of the people who are making some of those decisions. Research, there's tons of stuff online, and then you can beg, borrow, and steal, or you can get help from an expert, a coach, a consultant, somebody who has some of this knowledge that you can path your way to go, and they can point you to those resources, or you can get their actual formal support. So those are some suggestions for getting started. I want to pause and make sure that I leave time for questions. And originally I was going to do this, like, come off mute, but I don't know how to get that little button where we can all talk. So I'm going to be reading the chat and seeing if you have any questions. And then also, if you don't have any questions, I'd really, really love some feedback about this session. Like, what are things that were really helpful? How could I have done something better and different? And if this QR code works, it links to my link tree, so you can get more information and resources, or follow me on any of the socials, so you can make sure that you get some of those goodies. What questions or comments do folks have? I'd love to engage in a little conversation, which isn't going to be that much of a conversation. It's more going to be me responding to what's in the chat. But I'm happy to do so. Any questions that people have? Or reactions? Yeah, good questions. So Erica has a question in the chat around introducing ideas of psychological safety when onboarding to a new team. So I think there's a few things. I think it all depends on the culture of your organization and the size, but I think I would start with the manager or your direct manager and just ask the explicit question, like, what's the way that you foster psychological safety in this team? And if they don't have an answer, that's okay. And just like almost ask, can I share some thoughts? I think you can share this handout. There are a bunch of articles and blogs on psychological safety. And I think picking probably one or two ways that you want to see it manifest in your team, and having conversation. It's having conversation with your team. Like, what are the things that we want to focus on? Do we want to focus on feeling safe to make mistakes? Do we want to focus on how do we have belonging? And just engage in that dialogue. I think oftentimes having that, sometimes people don't know the term psychological safety, and it feels very foreign to them. So if you have the strategies, indicators, and kind of engaging them on that level can be really helpful. And then use some of those strategies to, like, say, let's try this on in some of our team meetings. Another strategy could be observing the first few team meetings and then having conversations, like, as you get to know people, of, hey, I was wondering if we could try starting off with check-ins that are more about who we are and how we bring our authentic selves to the work. I think those are some different strategies. All right, let me get to some of the other questions. Talk more about developing mentoring programs. So mentoring programs, I think a few things that I keep on top of my mind. One is make sure that there's support from leadership to have these mentoring programs. The best mentoring programs are when folks who have power in the organization, and power can be defined in many ways. It's not always the boss. It could be the people who have longevity, the folks who are oldest, the folks who have the most subject matter expertise, are mentoring those who are not having power at that moment. I would recommend getting first permission from leadership to have a mentorship program, hopefully some funding so that mentors or mentor mentees can have some financial aspect to, if you're going to be a mentor, you get additional funding or you get PTO or something to that effect. And then structure. Thinking about the structure of what it is. Are we saying that there's monthly meetings? Are we saying that there's a weekly expectation? There's so many different ways that you can create some of those structures. And Nakia, if you want, you can shoot me an email, and we can do like an email conversation about ways that you can get it started. And then doing a little bit of professional development for both the mentors and the mentees. What to expect in this in these two roles is going to be really important. So mentees come prepared with questions, mentors come prepared with resources, and making sure that mentors realize what their role is not just like passive, but also like active, and also for the same for the mentee. You've got to ask questions. You've got to know what it is that you want from this relationship. They can be really, really powerful. And what I would say is, I've had 3 mentors at different organizations. I was fortunate enough to have them, and they were actually across lines of difference. They were all white women, and I actually think those were pivotal in some of my career pivots, of them encouraging me, turning into sponsorships, or just telling me when, like, actually you can move on and there are better places than in this organization. So I really see the power of mentorship, and I'd really love for you to reach out to me so that I can help you with that. Yeah, Claire, there's so many things for higher ed institutions around psychological safety and how to build inclusive college campuses. Oh, the survey's not working? I totally tested the survey. Let me get out of this. And then Jane, researching organizations. Oh, the Survey Monkey one. Okay. Ooh, I got nervous. The research organizations that are safe or psychologically safer, I think it's really hard to research and not just ask. And I think if you're asking about like in an interview process or how you would engage with a team, I think asking questions around how does your team express disagreement? How does your team when was the last time that your team celebrated mistakes? When was the last time that someone made a really large mistake in your organization, and how did it get handled? I'm really big on, I do some career coaching as well. I'm really big on people who are interviewing, actually asking tough questions of their interviewers, especially when it comes to culture and inclusion and belonging. How do you define belonging? What are some implicit norms in your organization that aren't explicit, and how has that been challenging? All of those are questions that you can ask during an interview process to begin to get a sense as to how folks are safe. I mean, if their organizations are psychologically safe. If you're talking about generally organizations and like researching organizations that are psychologically safe, if on the survey you put that you want this PowerPoint, I have some resources on there of 2 or 3 books and articles around psychological safety, and they actually highlight some organizations that either struggled with psychological safety and got better, or were just like focused on it from the beginning and had some structures and systems. So I'm not sure which question you're asking, but I hopefully that answered both of them. Got about 5 more minutes left, so you could keep asking questions, or you can actually transition to like ahas and commitments. Like, what are you taking away from this session? Some of you already shared this. And what do you want to learn more about or commit to doing? I'm just checking the chat if I missed any question. I didn't miss any questions, but I'd love to hear any ahas or commitments that folks are making. And I'm so jealous that I cannot figure out how to get this to be more interactive so I can talk to you all, but we've got a few more minutes. Oh, Erica, I love the idea of you using that to share with your mentees. I think it's so important. Please, yes, share these resources, share these things. This is not like I share them because I think it's really important for people to understand them, and really like spread the knowledge, because the more people that are empowered with knowing about psychological safety, the more psychologically safe environments that we'll have, especially for Black and Brown folks. How do you keep it at the forefront? So, I mean, it's hard, right? Like, that's the one thing I will say. And I think it's really about team leads and individuals, like setting reminders. I know it's really technical, but some things that I do or I've coached other individuals to do, putting it in check-in documents on Asanas. Like, what are the ways that you, like, belonging this week, learning from failure? Tell me about asking questions that don't have to do about work, but have to do about your your own personal self, right? Like, what are the, like, so people can bring their whole selves to work. I think those are some key things to do. I also think just like putting it front of mind, like I have it in my folders. I have like setting goals and then putting those goals front of mind is really key because we've got so much to do that sometimes we forget about how the team works is just as important as what the team is able to accomplish. So I think just like really concretely is just like setting those reminders and putting them on check-in agendas, putting them on strategic plans so that they're front and center. Oh, Erica, whoo, do not bring your full self to work. I mean, if it's not safe for you to do so, I don't think you should, but I really like, I think that's what really unlocks people's genius is when they feel safe to bring their full self to work. And I encourage my team and people that I coach and work with to do so. Um, like I'm so intrigued by that I'd love for you to reach out to me so we can talk a little bit more about how you can work around that or what that means for your organization. Thank you, Amari, for sharing that reflection. I am so excited and so grateful for all of you for being here. We're hitting up at the hour, and I know that you all have other sessions to go to. I really appreciate the active chat and also the grace and patience with me looking at other screens and not setting permissions. I was really grateful to be a part of this space and was really honored to be asked to speak. So I just feel really like you guys just made my Saturday. I feel really blessed to be a part of this group. And I hope I get to see you in some of the other sessions. I'm really, really excited to see them, and we'll talk soon. Please reach out. I love to hear more and be able to help with anyone. Thanks so much. And make sure reach out if you want any of these resources because I will just send the deck and also some that has additional resources at the end. Bye, everybody.